finishing up their setup as they put their prize cards out, and we're kicking things off with our top 4 match here. Alberto Conti with Dragapult Dustoir versus Alejandro with that Terra box and the key ace spec in the prize cards.
And not just a sparkling crystal in the prize cards, but 2 area zeros. And we're starting off here. The good thing about Terra box is that when you lose the coin flip, you go first. When you win the coin flip, you also get to go first. Starting Ditto, Teal Mask Ogre Pawn, get a draw card, and then you can get to pick with Ditto and you transform into something like, well, potentially that Fan Rotom to be able to get out Hoot Hoots and Noctowl.
Yeah, it does have an Ultra Ball in hand as well, so could potentially go for something different here. But Terra Toolbox, we would love to explain all the strategies of the deck, but ultimately it comes down to those Noctowls with the Jewel Seeker ability. When you have a Terra Pokemon in play, you are able to search your deck for 2 training cards, put them into your hand. So you have a variety of attackers that in combination with the consistency of Noctowl, you're able to set up, and you use that Crispin to provide all the energy. And realistically, every match has a different strategy, and we'll be going through what that looks like here into Dragapult. But a very powerful deck that can often take games away in the first few turns.
Yeah, and that's what, like, Terra Toolbox is one of the most aggressive archetypes that we have in the format. You know, different solutions to every single thing. But what Alberto wants to be doing is drag this game out as long as possible. Get as many Phantom Dives through as possible. As many Dusknors as possible to build these damage counters on the board and kind of do one fell swoop to take the game, just as we saw against Julius yesterday.
So that Ditto in the active, able to transform into the Fan Rotom, a key part of this deck and the reason why it can go first. That Fan Call allowing you to find 3 colors Pokemon with 100 HP or less, which also includes the evolution of the Hoot Hoot. 2 Hoot Hoot and a Noctowl attained. And that means Alejandro's hand for next turn will be ready to get going. And we'll just be using that Ultra Ball here in the first turn. Why might that be important to use now?
Well, there's a certain call called Badoo, which has the Itchy Pollen, which would turn off item cards. So great awareness here from Alejandro saying, well, I do need that retreat. Especially with the Sparkling Crystal prized, you need to be able to retreat that Fan Rotom, go into Wellspring Mask Ogre Pawn, Noctowl for Crispin, and then be able to use the attack to get, you know, 2 prizes at that stage.
Well, the other side, Alberto will be looking at a near perfect start for Alejandro. Not much more he could want there. An attachment to the Wellspring Ogerpon, and now it is on Alberto to get set up as best possible. What's in that hand? You need to go wide. You need as many of those Droopy down as possible. And that hand's not looking particularly good for putting basics down.
It certainly does not, but there is an Iono in the hand, and one of the great strategies that Alberto can pull off when you're going second against these types of decks is that we already do know off the Fan Rotom that there is a Noctowl in the hand. So what you can do, play Iono, and if you can get into Badoo, multiple Dreepies, that's where you really want to be able to make sure that potentially with the Ultra Ball being turned off due to Itchy Pollen, that Alberto can get to breathe.
Well, you've described the dream turn. There's a lot to ask out of 6 cards for Alberto. Are they going to be there? It looks like we got some Dreepy and maybe a Buddy Poffin, I don't know, but we'll be able to set up a little bit here at least.
Yeah, but where's my Badoo, Alberto? I really do need to see that, because otherwise it opens up for a fantastic turn of Alejandro, potentially opening up, you know, getting something like Energy Switches and Boss to be able to take up both Dreepies.
No Badoo foul, no Buddy Poffin in that hand, so we'll have the Monkey Dory in the active spot, just waiting. And we know that Alejandro used that Iron Bundle so well in the last game to try and take out both the Dreepy.
We need 3 cards here. We need Energy Switch, Vessel, and Boss. And if you actually, with the Noctowl, if you go ahead and get Ultra Ball, you can use 2 Noctowls. And when you use one of the items off the first Noctowl to go ahead and get the Ultra Ball, you end up with 3 off the 2 Noctowls. It's pretty aggressive to go ahead from Alejandro's side of things to go ahead and do the boss play. But if you're looking at it, there's only 2 Dreepies in play after all.
And he could also go down an Area Zero Nest Ball and get the Iron Bundle and Crispin route. But it just depends on what's in that hand currently. So lots of different lines that can be reached in different ways. And that's why this deck has the contingency. Lots of one-off cards in the deck, but they often cover each other's roles. And you can see here, just getting those Area Zero, the Crispin to the front. So might be going down the Iron Bundle route. Which
is also a perfect solution here for Alejandro. Get to, you know, accelerate more energies into play instead of actually going ahead and, you know, taking them off the board, all of them. So here, yeah, Buddy Poffin gets more Hoot Hoots out. That's what we want. And we do already see that Nest Ball in hand, going to be able to grab that Iron Bundle.
There it is, the Iron Bundle. We saw it work so well in his quarterfinal match, and will be able to crisp in the energy into play and take both a Droopy out for Alberto. And it's asking a lot of Alberto to come back from this, but it is always possible. So for those of you watching at home and thinking, surely there's no way, well, Alberto's going to be trying to find a way going forward. This Wellspring Ogerpon dismantles boards so frequently. If you have only 2 small Pokemon like those Droopy in play, they can be taken out as soon as turn 2.
And you know what? On Alejandro's side, you're thinking, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And in this case, if you can get to remove both of the Dreepies, which you can, you'll put yourself in a perfect position after this Crispin.
Well, you can see the Mew EX coming down as well to add a little bit of safety in case of disruption. But there's not much going on in Alberto's hand too. Does have those Lily's Determinations, but really a huge rebuild required. And every prize card that Terra Box gets ahead makes it even more challenging, as we're going to see the knockout on the Monkey Dory and the Dreepy, leaving just a single Dreepy in play. Interesting decision here.
It makes sense in a consensus that, you know, you can get to avoid Mind Bend, right? Because if you want to be using Torrential Pump twice in a row, you need to go ahead and get out of that confusion, which you can't do the back and forth really well with the Terra Box decks. That actually makes good sense. The Dracloak only has 90 HP anyway, so regardless of whether that goes to the bench or not, that's going to be able to be knocked out. And Alberto doesn't play any rare candy, so it means that this Dracloak, if Crispin plus Energy Switch is being hit next turn, and Alberto doesn't get a Budgie out, which is what he needs to do here, you're going to end up in a position where you only Dracloak gets taken out, and then it's going to take you further turns to be building up, back up that board, and then you will see an insurmountable lead from Alejandro.
Amazing decision making. And with the Lily's Clefairy, Dragapults aren't as scary as they are against lots of other decks, because you can take them out with a one-hit knockout. But that Lily's Determination for 8 cards to Alberto, and a little bit more with that Recon Directive, now going to be rebuilding up the board. Alejandro has 3 Hoot Hoot available for those Noctowl. So many options going forward, and really focusing on stability rather than aggression. And that's such a differentiator between the top Terra Box players and those who may have just recently picked up the deck. Sometimes it's not about taking the obvious route, but it's about taking the one which makes you the safest going forward.
Exactly, and you're thinking, well, yes, it is stability, but I would also argue it's still aggression. You're doing this on a turn 2 exactly as you want to be doing. The one Dracloak here getting to use the Recon Directive, Fescendipity getting to draw some cards by Flip the Script is what Alberto wants to, but struggling so much because you didn't get that double Dracloak down, which means that in the end, you're at the mercy of whatever Alejandro can pull out next turn.
For sure, and no Sparkling Crystals still for Alejandro available. It's still in the prize cards. Alberto getting that Duskull down, and every knockout that Alejandro takes, the less possible it is for that Duskull line to be possible, as there won't be any prize cards to give up. And the Ultra Ball here, getting rid of the Brock Scouting and the Dragapult EX, looking to try and get that Budu, maybe the Latias. So many options available. And this is what we mentioned in the previous round. We said, once that first swing comes through from the Wellspring Ogerpon, you can no longer go down your conventional route because it becomes increasingly more difficult to build up the board. So you have to find these unusual alternative routes, things like Gust Stalling on Noctowls, taking your time, maybe using that Blood Moon earlier than expected. What kind of lines is Alberto going to be thinking about at this stage?
We need to be stabilizing his board. We need to get Budu down. When you're using Itchy Paw in this case, Alberto, of course, does not know that the Sparkling Crystal is prized, which is a saving grace here for Alberto. Otherwise, Alejandro could have done the easy job and go, well, I'll just knock down, get Sparkling Crystal and Crispin, and then, you know, that Dracloak will be out. So to stabilize here from Alberto, buying time is the essence here, which means you need to retreat that Dracloak into Budu, go Itchy Paw, and buy yourself as much time to be able to rebuild your board. And one thing I do really need to point out here, that one Duskull is going to be playing such an importance, because later, if Alejandro takes 2 prizes next time he attacks, then we're going to be able to see, you know, Dusclops or Dusknor pulling Alejandro potentially down to 1 prize, and then we can Iono, Smack, and giving Alejandro only 1 card in hand.
So Itchy Pollen announced by Alberto puts 10 damage on that Wellspring Ogerpon, which is an important number. And also looking to try and build those evolutions up. Has no rare candy, so has to evolve through those stage 1s.
Exactly, and we've seen the rare candy. We saw that in Frankfurt, but The thing about the Red Candy is just that it has a bit of more of a high roll aspect, whereas Jamming Tower is also a fantastic stadium card in this matchup, since that when you're Jamming Tower, you're turning off the Sparkling Crystal, although that can, of course, get countered by something like the Area Zero.
Well, the energy accelerates into play through that Crispin. One from the effect of the card, one goes to hand, but straight away attached onto the Wellspring Ogerpon there. And will be the water available. Water being only a 1 count typically in Terra Box, just to try and be an option in case that Sparkling Crystal's prized.
And it just lines into the consistency of it, right? You want to be able to do that constantly. Now, one thing that's also cool for Alejandro is that by sobbing, you legitimately just stick this Budew in the active. Yes, Alberto could be playing stuff like Turo, but if you're playing Professor Turo's scenario, you're not drawing more cards, and you really want to be drawing as many cards as possible. So Alberto sits, you know, sob locked technically, although if there's another sob to come through, that Budew's going to get knocked out. So it's not going to be stuck for long, but, you know, buying these small turns one at a time is going to be, you know, what has Alberto building up despite the item lock.
Many people at home will watch Terra Box and think surely it's always going to win from here because it's such an aggressive deck, gets ahead early. But what is it about Terra Box that allows decks like Dragapult to come back so well?
Terra Box has a bit of a weakness against Iono. Typically, you need to be using Noctowl to be able to get your stuff out. But if you're getting Iono down to a low hand size, potentially you getting knocked out. If you have Fissantipity in play, getting that knocked out and doing, you know, a double peat of that, then you'll end up in trouble. Actually really smart to hear from Alberto using that Area Zero to his own advantage by using the Buddy Puffin to get that third 3P piece out and a second Duskull. One thing I can look at from Alberto's side, and it's a really cool play that he can make later in the game, if you can get Dusknoir going, you can use Curse Blast for 130 on Miyu. If you can potentially then Halucha or something like that onto a coming Fessantipity, you can actually be taking 4 prizes in one turn and dismantling the entire engine of Alejandro's deck. And that is the way you typically would be beating Terra Box if everything goes according.
Well, the Iono has come through early on, a counter catcher in the new hand. A great combination, having counter catcher and Iono, 2 cards that work synergistically so well. Having the Gust option with counter catcher, the hand disruption with Iono, asking as many questions out of your opponent afterwards, and that Noctowl really is a big target for people when looking to disrupt, especially with that Latias only reducing the retreat cost of basic Pokemon.
Indeed, that is true, and you know, getting that Dusclops into play, giving a bit of a wink towards the play I was mentioning earlier with being able to Curse Blast MU and take that out with the bench damage of the Phantom Dive technically later. But yeah, Alberto is just, you know, playing with Area Zero, because one thing that's also very cool about Area Zero when you're playing the counter stadium to it is you can actually control how your bench is going to look later in the game, because whenever Area Zero is countered by, in this case, it would be Jamming Tower, each player has to discard their bench down to 5 Pokemon, which in Alberto's case would be, let's just remove all the weak pieces from my board.
Well, looking as to whether the counter catcher is used or not, Alberto is just going to use Itchy Pollen into the active Wellspring Mask Ogerpon, and the energy goes straight down onto it. Lily's determination, build up some more resources, and we'll be seeing the 2 Pokemon knocked out through Wellspring Ogerpon. Torrential Pump, 100 to the active, and 120 to the bench if you shuffle all those energy back in. It can do that already, and on top of that, Alejandro is going to see 6 more cards with that Lily's determination.
6 more cards. It's not going to give a lot of, you know, context for this turn, but it's going to be useful for the later turns. Although Alejandro likely going to be taking that secondary knockup with the Torrential Pumps damage onto the Dusclops to avoid that whole Mew play I was talking about there. But then what you can do on Alberto's side is look at it and be like, hey, yes, I don't play Red Candy, but I could potentially with Halucha set up, you know, KOs on Hoot Hoot plus that Teal Mask Ogerpon there on the bench, which is looking mighty fine to take out.
Interesting scenario here with all of the bench filled up on Alejandro's side. Can't put Lily's Clefairy in play, so perhaps Alberto, conscious of that, is looking to try and bench lock his opponent. But we'll see how this turn pans out. Allowing that knockout to be sustained opens up the flip the script from Fezandipity. 2 prize cards remain for Alejandro. Alberto still needs to get 6. It's not out of his realm. He is very capable of winning this game from here, but it will be an uphill climb.
It is an uphill climb, but we've seen Alberto in tough positions before. Also speaking of that Godable matchup that he played previously in the tournament. But looking at it here, Alberto has been successful in stabilizing a little bit. Needs to be able to pull off that Phantom Dive attack. Potentially, we could be seeing Alberto doing something like, counter-catching this Teal Mask Ogrepon and doing 200 damage to it. Because if you're able to do that, you can be, again, keeping that bench lock going. Alberto does not play a counter stadium to his own Area 0. Typically, we've seen something like Jamming Tower itself from these Terra toolboxes, but Alejandro has decided then, let's just go triple Area 0. And it just opens up for Alberto's play of potentially actually making a 6 prize turn happening on the following turn if we can get into Dusknoir at some point.
Well, we'll see what the rest of this turn entails. Not many cards available to Alberto, having to really draw as much as possible. And putting that Horlucha in play with the flying entry will put 10 damage on 2 different Pokemon. One on a Fanrotom and your choice of Hoot Hoot. You can pick which one you'd like, and it looks like it's going to be that one in the middle there. And the energy attachment, this Dragapult can now do 200 to which Pokemon Alberto? What are you gusting up? It's going to be going for that Mew, which will take a knockout, but will take away the draw.
Iono, Mike.
Iono down to 2. So Alberto will see a fresh 6 cards here. On the other side, Alejandro only gets 2.
So for Alejandro, if he goes ahead and gets a knockdown, we can get Lily's Clefairy plus Crispin for a game on the following turn. But that's why we played Iono. That's why we go ahead and counter catch up the Mew, remove potentially one of the Hoot Hoots on the bench with that Phantom Dive, and then you're able to open up the game. But it depends on, does Alejandro whiff off this Iono?
Well, what cards have you got available, Alejandro? 2 cards in hand. Alberto takes 3 prize cards.
There's an Ultra Ball.
What do you have? It's going to be the Crispin, Professor Turo, and the Ultra Ball.
Does play the full 4 suite of Crispin, so you can actually be, even though you drew the 3rd, the 4th's not prized, so if Alejandro goes in, Ultra Ball, are we going to see it here, Mike?
Well, he's going to get the Noctowl. Jewel Seeker searching for any 2 trainer cards, just needs Nest Ball plus Crispin. Is the Psychic Energy in there? And there is going to be Crispin, Nest Ball, Lily's Clefairy, all the energy available. Alejandro wins game 1 of the semi-final.
And you know what? As I said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Alejandro going with the perfect game strategy here. And Alberto trying, Alejandro doing the perfect Terra toolbox strategy. Double knockout turn 2. And just keeping on that mounting pressure. We do see the replay here. What a perfect turn 1 going first. Starting Ditto. Such importance. And then the oof from Alberto there. And yeah, we just see Noctowl, Area 0, Crispin. Let's just keep this train going. And then Crispin setting up. And even with, prizing that Sparking Crystal, it didn't end up mattering at all.
And that decision to take out the Monkey Dory, so smart, as it forced way more for Alberto. Just an energy attachment would have allowed Alberto to disrupt Alejandro, but instead took it out, leaving the Dreepy to go to the active spot, which slowed down Alberto, forced a lot more resources out of him, and took him down this line of setting up slowly. And that allowed Alejandro to take a further 2 prize cards on this later turn, putting him in a great position to win the game.
And we ended up with a position where Alberto was actually only 1 turn short of then winning the game, having set that up beautifully, and then asking the question of this Iono, can you get knocked out? And the answer, well, was yes. Did you have the resources left, Alejandro? You did indeed.
And it was that Iono down to 1. You think back, and Alberto was presented with so many options on that previous turn with the counter catcher Iono, and you do wonder what the dream scenario would have been, maybe even popping the Dusclops before, which wasn't possible because he found that after the Iono. There's all these different things that could have made the turn more perfect for him, but in the end, he wasn't able to reach them. He did his absolute best to claw that one back, but it was not possible. 2 Duskull in the prize cards.
And Mike, how many Duskulls does Alberto run?
I think that might be 2.
Oh, that means that that's not going to be an option. So basically, Alberto's going to be playing straight Dragapults in this game. With the placement of the Duskulls in the prizes, they're going to come way later than we wanted it to be.
Interesting difference in this semi-final to the quarterfinal. Henry Brand chose to go first into the Terra toolbox, where it seems like Alberto is happy with Alejandro going first. What are the benefits of those decisions, whether you're going first or second?
The way that Henry was thinking is that Terra Toolbox wants to go first. It has most of its strengths in going first. Although, it means when you're going first as Dragapult, you really do need to hit Body Puffin, if not in the multiples of that. And if you don't do that when you go first, you literally sit with a nothing turn and giving your opponent the way of just playing a supporter on the first turn, which isn't great either, and potentially going into a Wellspring Mask Ogre Pond. So Alberto picking the more safe route. Going second means you get to play as a supporter card in your first turn. Potentially that Lily's Determination and being able to start setting up your board. But then again, speaking of Lily's Determination, that looks like one of the only things that's going on for Alberto in his hand.
Speaking of things going on, Alejandro, what a start again, getting the Fan Rotom as well as 3 Hoot Hoots and using that Ditto to get the Wellspring Mask Ogerpon into the active spot. We'll just be doing a quick prize check here. Oh, I've got to know which of those energies are available. Last time the Sparkling Crystal was a key piece missing, and something like that final decision to discard the Crispin, which we saw, that was quite literally the difference between winning and losing, if he knew there was a Crispin prize or not. So it is so key for these top players to know what's available in the deck.
And it seems to me, Mike, I'm unsure here. Is this game 1 or game 2? Because like Alejandro is doing almost exactly the same every single time. But I mean, it works because here Alberto wants to be setting up. But if Alejandro sets up better, hits the cards better, this is a favorite matchup for Terra Toolbox, but it requires these things to happen. But, you know, Alejandro, when presented with the question of, is it doable or not? And even that Sparkling Crystal to follow along on turn 1, not even scared here, because then Iono wouldn't be able to wash that back into the deck.
Well, there's a Dreepy, and there's a few little bits in that hand to work with. Otherwise, the Lily's Determination up to 8 will be a huge opportunity at this early stage. And it's actually quite beneficial to have these big 2-prize EXs in play like Latias and Serendipity. What does that allow for Alberto to do next turn?
So with the Latias and Serendipity, we're expecting that the Torrential Pump is going to come through. Latias would give free retreats and go to Budju this turn. We want to be hitting Buddy Puffin off this Lily's Determination so we can actually get a secondary P Budju out so we can get that, you know, turn 3 Dracloak. But literally, actually, what we want here is more Dreepies. We want to be able to guarantee double Dracloak here on the following turn. Latias gives a movement. Serendipity gives draw cards next turn.
Well, certainly won't be getting any Duskull. They're both prized. So 8 cards off this Lily's Determination, the most powerful card we've seen out of the Mega Evolution set, appearing in so many of these evolving decks, taking the place of Professor's Research for many. And there's a Buddy Puffin in the hand, and a Budu, and a Dreepy.
Right.
So Alberto should be able to set up confidently here. Maybe game 1 was a slightly suboptimal start for him. This time should be good.
And there's a Jamming Tower too in the hand, so Alberto can be forcing more cards out of Alejandro here. And when you're playing the more slower deck into an aggressive decks, you have to be thinking, what can I do to make it so I put it a lot harder on Alejandro here? And Jamming Tower is one of those pieces, right? And with the way that Alberto has to play this game, it's giving a nod to a deck he's played a lot the last season, which was that straight Dragapult variant. Now, Alberto has to go back and be like, well, I got to replay that deck again.
Yeah, going to be working out now. Hang on a minute. There's no Duskull here. So won't be able to take control of those at this stage. So going to have to purely go for the Dreepy, as you mentioned. A very different strategy. That even one of those Dreepy prize means can't go fully wide with it. Doesn't actually have the bench space for it if he wants to commit the Budu too. So an interesting start here. So many of these early turns really dictate the pace into Terra Box. If they can completely wipe all your options, it really slows down the game. And that's where that Jamming Tower and item lock from the Budu come in combination to try and disrupt the play. So looks like the Budu and the Dreepy going to be the options.
Yeah, and then it has the extra Dreepy in hand on top of that, so we can, you know, get a bit closer to that dream of double Dracloak turn 2. That stabilization of the board that Alberto needs, and not being weak to Iron Bundle as we saw in last game. Last game, Alberto's board wasn't built up that well, being that you were so weak to Iron Bundle, but here you get triple Dreepy, exactly what we want. On top of that, being able to use the Itchy Pollen. You know, Alberto's gotten every single piece of everything here that he wants to see, and even, you know, pulling that Jamming Tower out, being like, well, a bit of annoyance. Are we going to do that? And
oh, the hesitation, not quite sure what's right, and we'll be putting it down into play. Can be quite useful later on as a stadium bump, but also early on to disrupt that Sparkling Crystal, and that the stadium instantly goes, the Area 0 under depths jumping straight into play, and we see a Crispin almost instantly as well from Alejandro. Simple first turn, doesn't even need to use that Noctowl yet, has all the pieces available to take that knockout, and will hold on to the Noctowl. Quick turns here as Alejandro starts things off.
And turn 2 prizes, which falls perfectly into that 2-2-2 prize mapping that Alejandro wants to see. And Alberto is just facing such a climb now with that secondary, not even secondary Bidoof prize, but even just like not sitting with the options that he needs in hand is going to make everything so much more difficult for him. Needs to get double Dracloak this turn, needs to be able to try and build a board. But then again, with Alejandro sitting on a Noctowl, says, well, I just got everything I need, and even if you Iono me, I would have 3 Hoot Hoots to be able to use.
Not even having to use the Noctowl is crazy. You know, typically we talk about how great Terra Box is because it has the ability to send a Noctowl into play and fight anything it wants. But now everything in play has a free retreat, thanks to that Latias EX and not a single evolved Pokemon. So this counter catcher to bring the Hoot Hoot up is more of a fact to try and get 10 damage onto it and less of a fact of it's going to get stuck in the active.
It's also a bit of a fact that, you know, Latias is down, so that Hoot's never going to be stuck in this world. But Alberto also looking at, I need to also get rid of some cards. I'm using potentially lilies and I like need to be able to start building. And yeah, got to get that for Dreepy down, because if you don't have Induscles, then, you know, what else are you going to be putting down?
And there's the Iono. Every time you Iono a Terra Box, you've got to hope that they just don't see what they need on the other side.
Oh my, there is no Dracloak. Please, Fesendibity.
Flip the script. A Pokemon was knocked out during the last turn. Alberto gets to see 3 more cards here. There is a Dracloak there. Needs to try and get 2 if possible. And it really is
I'm telling you here, Mike, if we don't get 2 Dracloaks out, which we do here, but if we didn't get 2 Dracloaks out, Alejandro would just been like, well, if I'm sitting on Noctowl, there comes a Crispin, and then that Dracloak's going to be gone. And it would also, on top of that, mean that it would take an additional turn for Alberto to build up this, which is going to make it that much more difficult. Alberto's still on the back burner here, still on the back foot, because, you know, you're going to be down 4 prizes before you even get to blink.
Well, this is one of those matchups where Dragapult has to try and find a way to claw back, if possible. And at this stage, Alejandro is in the perfect position to keep swinging with that Wellspring Mask Ogerpon. And the buddy will be coming into the active spot with an Itchy Pollen onto the Hoot Hoot. And what's in that hand, Alejandro? Iono to 4. What's available? There is an energy there. There's a Pheasantipity to come down, but doesn't look like there's too much going on. And it's just going to be that Fan Rotom coming into the active for an attack.
Even though Alejandro takes down 1, it means the other one's going to be able to be followed along with an Iono to 1.
But with the Pheasantipity in play, that does help out next turn somewhat. But Alberto really given a chance here. With 3 prize cards remaining for Alejandro, he will need 2 turns to try and get ahead. And Alberto at this stage has the ability to take 3 prize cards a turn, as there's so many options available thanks to that Dragapult attack being so effective into Terra Box. And with so many cards being drawn, it almost feels inevitable sometimes that Dragapult's going to get it.
Yeah, when you're sitting on Flip the Script, Recon Directive, and potentially Recon Directive again, sitting on that Ultra Ball already, needs a basic energy. Luminous obviously cannot be combined with another special energy, otherwise it would just turn into a colorless energy. So Alberto still needs to be finding that, but looking at it here, clawing his way back into this game, potentially we can also be seeing something like a counter catcher targeting that Festivity. So we can say, you know, Alejandro's sitting in a sticky position here. If we can just put 200 on the Festivity, not take a knockout, because then we can, you know, disable that Flip the Script.
Huge moment now as another Dracloak is taken for that Recon Directive on the final Dreepy. And there is just 1 piece missing, it seems like. Just that extra energy. I see 2 Luminous in hand, but they will not go in combination with the Luminous in play currently. What's off this Recon Directive? Anything there? It seems like a quick decision. Is it the piece you need for this turn? Might be a Night Stretcher, it seems.
Yeah, putting that Fire Energy on the top of the deck. Yeah, that is a Night Stretcher we have in the hand. So the perfect turn here would be, you know, Dragapult, just that up that Festivity and being able to Phantom Dive for 200 and kind of put it on Alejandro saying, listen here, I'm starting to try and build up an insurmountable board lead here. What are you going to do?
And it's going to be Boss, and it's actually going to be going for the Wellspring Mask Ogerpon. Worried about the attacks coming through from it. With the Sparkling Crystal taken out as well, that's an option gone.
I'm a
Well,
bit surprised by this, Mike, because you're allowing the Festivity to then use Flip the Script next turn, which could be enabling something like the Lily's Clefairy, but you're going to be able to take out one of those Hoot-Hoots anyway, take free prizes, and it also means that with the Halucha, if you're able to be putting 10 on the Festivity, 10 on the Feint Rotom, you can then be building free extra prizes for next turn. So it feels really good into being able to build that, 2 attacks, 6 prizes.
and it's taken a Terra Pokemon out of play, so now if a Noctowl were to evolve from one of those Hoot-Hoot, you would not be able to use the Jewel Seeker. So Alejandro is now going to have to work out, firstly get a Terra Pokemon, then work out how to get a Noctowl, all of that off of 3 draws from that Festivity. So asking a lot now, Alberto, and by taking 3 prize cards, can win next turn. Looking to try and take it across 2 attacking turns.
Needs a Gust, needs Halucha, and then we're at goal with that. And typically we don't see a lot of disruption coming in from these Terra Toolbox decks, which, I mean, in Alejandro's case, doesn't even play Iono. So every single time when an opponent sits on something, they're going to be able to just keep sitting on that. And we do see the attachment to the Wellspring Mask Ogerpon, the energy switch over, and are we just going to be seeing, Mew?
Okay, well, we'll see how the turn pans out here. An attachment and an E-switch. Lots to do for Alejandro. Still needs 3 prize cards, which is a lot at this stage. It's not going to be easy. So Alberto has plenty of time, and this has quickly swung into his favor. It looked very much in Alejandro's side, but one Iono completely shifted the game back into the favor of Dragapult.
I'm not quite sure. I think I saw in Alberto's hand it wasn't out to getting that Halucha out of the deck, either by having it itself or an Ultra Ball. We're really going to be looking at Alberto's hand when we get a shot at seeing that. But you have to think about it, when you go for that Torrential Pump, it's only going to be dealing 100 to Dragapult, potentially setting that up for another attacker, whether that be Bloodmoon or Saluna or alike. But you're still taking out one of those for Cloak. You're taking out a draw piece, but then enabling Flip the Script, which in this situation for Alejandro doesn't really feel that great.
We'll see what the plan is here. Alejandro, just having a quick think. It is a tough deck to pilot. So many lines available when you have that Noctowl. The Jewel Seeker searching any 2 trainers means that you can pretty much do anything on a turn where you have a Noctowl, but you have to work out what the correct thing to do is. And when
I can see that Halucha there.
Yeah.
He's flipped it to the top of his hand. We do need to see if there's another boss.
I mean, Alberto has been drawing so many cards with that Recon Directive. The hand is only going to get stronger and stronger as the game goes on without disruption. So it seems like the Ultra Ball coming through for Alejandro, going to be for that Noctowl most likely. And what have you decided to string together on this turn?
Gonna come with the Noctowl here, searching out 2 trainer cards with that Jewel Seeker that we've seen so many times. But it's always going to be the question, Mike. Like, what are we going to be getting here that actually can do something to the board? Potentially getting rid of both their cloaks could be something that we'd be looking at.
Maybe even Soblock.
Soft blocking could be a thing, but then again, is that actually going to, put anything against what Alberto's trying to do? But then again, you could also be thinking, that their cloak there could be churroed. If we decide to soft block that, that's pretty terrible to soft block, honestly. We would much rather soft block Latias or Festivity, but it would just be like, wait and see when Alberto would be getting a Professor Turo scenario then.
Well, the main thing we always describe when you're in a rough position is you have to think unorthodox. And Alejandro right now is trying to think of that unorthodox route. And the Night Stretcher coming in, bring the Hoot-Hoot back. And it will be that boss's orders onto the Festivity EX, going into that Wellspring Mask Ogerpon to try and use a Sob here and deny the retreat. That Festivity EX in the active takes 20 damage and now cannot retreat.
And going on to Alberto's turn, then it means that we need to either be attaching free energy to attack with the Festivity. That doesn't sound too great, honestly. Or we would be needing to find that Professor Turo scenario. But one thing that's really smart from Alejandro here, if Alberto chooses to use Turo on Festivity, you know what Alejandro can do? Go ahead and boss the Latias, and then the Latias is going to be stuck for 11 turns.
And that's it, right? There's only so many resources most decks have in case of retreat lock. It's normally a Turo or a Switch or a Jet Energy. In the case of Dragapult EX, it tends to be quite thin on ways to get out of this. And as you mentioned, just the one Professor Turo scenario here. And now just putting that Monkey Dory in place. Smart play from Alberto.
Smart play from Alberto, indeed, being able to basically say, whenever you're solving me, you're just giving me 20 damage I can start tossing onto your side of the board, meaning that we don't even need to be using Halucha when it comes to it.
it would quite literally open up the win condition once that Professor Turo scenario is met. Doesn't need to worry about using anything else at that turn. So Monkey Dory at this stage, a benefit, which will mean one card out for Alberto. The Professor Turo scenario is not prized. It's in the deck somewhere. It's just a matter of time before it comes through. What is your return here, Alejandro? You've kept him locked for one turn. Now, what was your future plan? What's the next step?
What this 20 damage on the Wellspring Mask Ogre Pawn really means is that once Alberto hits that Professor Turo, the game is over. Because if Alejandro just sits and sobs, you're giving 20 damage each and every single turn. Alberto already sits on Halucha in hand. So what could be happening there? If we go sob again, well, we just toss 20 down to something like Hoot Hoot, Fan Rotom, and then Turo up that Festivity, Phantom Dive would take free prizes.
Well, this was a spanner in the works. The Monkey Dory coming through as a slightly different angle. It does mean that the idea of sob blocking over and over again to build up damage is not available. If that was the plan for Alejandro, you now got to find a new route. And this is what we're saying about the playing from behind. Terrabox has options. It has ways to do things. But what are the options here for you, Alejandro? Alberto has shown exactly how a Dragapult can come back into this game. An Iono and a big board setup all in one turn can really swing the game back in favor.
The thing I'm failing to see here is how Alejandro would take free prizes at once. Since with the position we're giving here by Alejandro is that if you don't take those free prizes at once, you're going to be sitting in a position where Alberto just sits with the options of going, I will take free prizes at once. They get to get rid of that Rotom off the board, which is really good, and getting out that Mega Mawile.
Oh, a quick little read there from Alberto. And for you guys at home, I think this is the first time we've seen Mega Mawile on the stream here with that Gobble Down attack. The attack does 80 damage to each prize card you have taken. And if your opponent's active Pokemon already has any damage counters on it, its attack base damage is 30. That's for Huge Bite, which does 260 otherwise. So an interesting attacker. We've seen it a little bit in some decks recently, but for Alejandro, I guess this was maybe an answer for certain decks that were on the rise, like Mega Absol.
Yeah, Cornerstone out. It's really good at that. And currently, the Gobble Down would be, well, if we're going for Mass Class 8 times 3, that's 24. So 240 damage is the Gobble Down range currently. Going for Saw Block again, and you know that Hoot Hoot down there? If you go ahead and you toss the 20 from the Festivity, those 20 right here, if we go ahead and toss those away over to the Hoot Hoot and get Professor Turo scenario, then we got it. But it's all depending on what happens off these Dracloaks here.
Well, there's 2 Dracloaks currently available to try and dig towards Professor Turo's scenario. As soon as that is found by Alberto, he will be able to just win the game. And being able to see 2 cards per turn and choose one to put in your hand is the fact you get to put the one you don't like on the bottom that allows you just to increase the quality of the top of that deck. And we'll just be checking how thick the deck is to know how far away that Professor Turo scenario is. And has an energy, has all sorts of things in that hand to try and kind of prep for next turn. But what's Alejandro's retort in this scenario? Is it to try and evolve everything up to put it out of range so that it would take more than this current scenario for Alberto to win? Maybe that's the case.
Yeah, if you kind of go ahead and remove, you know, the option to knock out this Hoot Hoot, whether that be just evolving it into Noctowl, that would be great. But then again, if you're sitting and stopping again and again and again, you would be putting that Noctowl that eventually would be in that slot in range anyway. If you get to Sob once more, let's say that, you know, we Adrenaline Brain those 20 damage from the Festivity down to the Hoot Hoot on the bench, then we'll end up in a position where if we do that twice, it would still have 60 HP left in that case, which, you know, fits perfectly within Phantom Dive range.
An EA Turo scenario there, no, just the Neo upper energy, not needed right now. So now has to try and work out how to gain another turn back. A huge hand there. And that Monkey Dory will be moving 20 across onto a Noctowl, playing it safe, doesn't need to move it onto the Hoot Hoot, can just put it onto the evolved Noctowl now, because Hawlucha would then put that in range. And the Dragapult here just to evolve some things up, thin out that deck, so next turn Professor Turo's scenario is as likely as possible.
I'm not even sure if I would have gone ahead and do that, Mike, because whenever you're using, you know, Recon Directive, you're putting cards at the bottom of the deck. Even though, yes, you're using Brock to thin out a card from your deck, basically what you're doing by shuffling your deck is actually you're lessening your odds of hitting that Turo on the next turn. Even though, yes, you're getting to see 7 cards with top deck plus triple Recon Directive, you still have to give it a nod to that. Yes, we're removing 1 card technically from the deck, but we have to remember which, you know, amount of the deck we can actually be looking at.
Yeah, and Alberto trying to just work out the odds here, and we see a Crispin to put some energy onto that Mega Mawile. So we're finally going to get a chance to see the Mega Pokemon here, as well as that Noctowl potentially evolving up. This is a really interesting endgame scenario. It did look impossible for Alejandro, but I think he's putting himself in a really good position here to ask as many questions of Alberto next turn as possible.
Yeah, because here with the way that the position is built up, there's no damage on Alberto's board, which means that Adrenabrain is going to be unable to be used at all. And then we can go ahead and gobble down for 240 onto the Festivity with a Pokemon that's not going to be knocked out by Phantom Dive. Then Alejandro will be down to 1 prize, and when you're down to 1 prize, what do you need, Mike?
Well, I just need 1 prize card.
Well, you do need 1 prize card, but you need a boss's orders, and you know, energy switch, really good to get that second energy you need for Gobble Down, although that has to be a secondary metal energy.
Exactly, as this is fascinating here for Alejandro. Alberto has such a big hand full of options, but never found that Professor Turo scenario in time, which gave Alejandro a few turns to play with to build up to this exact scenario we're in now, as he moves the energy across. And we'll just be looking to try and use that Mew to find the metal energy, thinning that deck out of cards. Needs to find a metal energy here to start attacking with that Mega Mawile. Doesn't find it. And this is not gone to plan. It is just an attachment onto the Mega Mawile. Might need another turn here, so we might see another sob. Alejandro sobs once again.
We could have also have seen, you know, genome hacking for Cool Arrow and actually just knocking out one of these Cloaks, then going down to 2 prize cards, then being able to take it on next turn with, you know, Boss, Metal Energy. Now, we still need to be hitting that Professor Turo scenario.
I mean, 3 Recon Directives. Surely you're going to see it here. Is there a Professor Turo scenario? It doesn't look like there is. Alberto unable to find his win condition. 1 card here to try and get him into the scenario.
And I do think it's maybe potentially Alberto being punished actually by playing that Brock Scouting on the past turn. You know, even though, yes, you were digging out that singular card, you were shuffling your deck.
Well, the deck order has been changed over and over again as the Dracloak was found, as the Dragapult was found, and it just seems like that Professor Turo scenario keeps going down to the bottom, and that damage moved across. Look how big that hand is for Alberto. There's not a Professor Turo scenario in there, but maybe next turn is the turn. It seems almost guaranteed at this point with how much digging has happened. So Alejandro gets 1 more chance now to try and find a solution.
Saw pass, saw pass, saw pass. Alejandro, do you have anything that would change the game here? On top of this, Alejandro's sitting on 2 cards. What is actually really cool about the play that Alejandro's making here is that you've opened up for the position of Mega Mawile being knocked out by Blood Moon or Saluna whenever that comes in active. Yes, it does 240 Blood Moon or Saluna, but by, you know, using Counter Catcher first, then using Halucha, then using Boss's Orders, and then going Blood Moon, you could do it.
Well, it seems like the genome hacking is going to come through, which will release that Serendipity from Retreat Lock, and this will allow Alejandro to get close. We'll swing into the Dracloak. Genome hacking, copying Cruel Arrow for 1 prize card. Now Alberto just needs to find the win. Does he have it in hand? It must be in that massive hand you've got there.
There's 2 counter catchers. There's Ursaluna, there's Halucha. We can be putting 10 damage counters on the Mega Mawile with that Halucha, putting it down to 240 HP, attaching a singular energy to that Blood Moon or Saluna. Alberto, do we have it here? Halucha's gonna come down. 10 to Mega Mawile, 10 to the Noctowl, and that's gonna be 240 damage left. All you need is to play that Blood Moon or Saluna, an energy card. Doesn't matter if it's new upper, counter catcher. We do have Alberto wrapping up game 2, and you know, what a sequence of events that happened up to this.
Yeah, 4 or 5 back and forths as the players couldn't find their win conditions. It was Alejandro having to find an unusual route to victory, but all the while Alberto's hand was getting bigger and bigger, and there were options galore, and in the end it was that Blood Moon in combination with some damage. The only downside of that sob was it was presenting damage for the Monkey Dory. But let's look back to how it all started. It was Alejandro with the near perfect setup as Alberto tried to disrupt with Itchy Pollen.
Play the stadium, get it countered, and it would just have a big back and forth, back and forth. Alberto getting the time to breathe, playing this Iono. And this was really what switched the game, because Alejandro didn't hit anything off that Iono. Left him on crutches basically here, and then we had to go into this turn where, you know, knocking out this Wellspring Mask Ogre pawn, knocking out the Hoot Hoot, setting up for that potential 2-turn, 6-prize layout. But then we ended up in soft territory.
And forced a lot out of Alejandro to rebuild, needs to get a Terra Pokemon and evolve some of those Hoots. And all the while, Alberto was digging with his Recon Directives to try and find the Professor Tiro scenario to win the game. All the while, Alejandro built up his Mew EX with the genome hacking and used the Cruel Arrow to take out a Dracloak to say, I can win next turn.
And we ended up with the Halucha, 10 damage to Mega Mawile, new upper to Blood Moon Ursaluna. We don't care about that. Counter Catcher on the Mega Mawile, taking the last 3 prices. And such ingenuity from Alberto, seeing that, hey, if I put these 20 damage on here, and I got Halucha, and likely my Terra Box opponent does not play Iono, we're just sitting on everything we need.
It was almost a detriment having to move that damage around and the Noctowls evolving up. You know, the plans were falling away for Alberto, but as the plans are falling away for Alberto, Alejandro wasn't able to quite fulfill his plans, so both of them got more time than they expected to execute their plans. And on this occasion, the prize cards looking fairly rough for both players, but nothing
Ditto
too
start
crazy.
again.
Ditto start again for Alejandro.
I mean, we was talking about, you know, opening perfectly, but then the question is going to come again, right? You know, we open perfectly. Are we going to be able to follow up that perfect opening with more perfection?
Well, the Wellspring Mask Ogerpon seems to be the key piece going to the active. Do you have a way to get the fan rotom? I assume so, as this has been the same setup every time. The consistency of Terra Box on those first turns is incredible. Last game, didn't even need to use the Noctowl to do that first attack. This time, we'll be looking to get the Fan Rotom through an Ultra Ball there.
Exactly, and Fan Rotom gonna go ahead and get the good old gang together, getting that, you know, those Hoots and the Noctowl, and, you know, proceed to set up perfectly. Ditto transforming into that Wellspring Mask Ogerpon, giving you everything you want.
The perfect start seems to be Alejandro's day, as previously a top 32 was his best finish. This event was the first of the season where all he wanted to do was try and make it to the stream and make some money, and already has done so. Now with his second stream game, looking to try and prove that he can make it all the way to the final. Meanwhile, Alberto, our Gdansk regional champion from last season, one of the top players here in Europe, has shown exceptional talent throughout the event, and a Buddy Poffin to kick things off.
Straight from the top of the deck. And that is the best feeling you can get while you're playing Dragapult. Looking at a hand that's like, not quite sure what's going to happen here. And then going into a top deck Buddy Poffin, guaranteeing his setup. And speaking of, well, we had double Duskull prized. Got to play straight Dragapult last time around. We don't have to do that this time. We have Duskull.
Opens up more lines, more options to win the game quicker. Can often allow the disruption to be more effective too. You can be in control of that turn where you Iono down to as fewer cards as possible. And again, that Latias start is one of the dream cards in this matchup to start with. You do want it in play, and sometimes you'll just leave it in the active when the Budoos aren't available. But on this occasion, the item lock is part of Alberto's early plans.
It just gives you this mobility that you want. Making sure that whenever you have Latias in play, Buddy Poffin into Budu, you don't have to be, you know, investing an energy card to be able to just move.
And Buddy Poffin, plenty more to do this turn. The supporter there, you got the Neo upper energy, that ace spec that hasn't been a huge component of this game, because it tends to be the slower setups of both players, but it is a key card in this matchup because you need to be able to suddenly get energy out of nowhere a lot of the time.
Yeah, and again, Iono, turn 1. You've seen Vein Rotom get Noctowl. What's the best thing you can do? Iono, Budu, and to hint from Alejandro, even though it packs a Crispin, if we can get more 3-piece down on Alberto's side, it actually looks quite good.
Sometimes that lone Noctowl in hand, getting Iono to the bottom, can completely slow down a Terra Box. It seems crazy that one card in hand getting disrupted is such an impactful thing, but if Alejandro didn't draw into one, and especially as he's going to be item locked, he's not going to have that out with an Ultra Ball. It's going to make it really tricky for him, and it's actually just going to be going into the Budu, not the Dreepy there. That would have been crazy from Alberto. Does want to be item locking on this occasion, and looks like not much left to do this turn.
And good sportsmanship here from Alejandro, seeing that, okay, that's an honest mistake. We both knew you were going into Budu. Yeah, just go ahead and do that, even though it was leaving the hands and all that. So very good sportsmanship on Alejandro's side here. But yeah, that Crispin coming in, and, you know, just checking. We have the water energy, check. and a Grass Energy. So you can even get the Teal Dance on top if Alejandro has another energy in hand. And that's what's so great about this Teal Mask Ogerpon. It's an attacker you can build up. It's a way for you to get energy onto the board to be able to energy switch around whenever you need to. But, you know, it's also a pretty decent attacker.
So no second Dreepy, no second Duskull, no third Dreepy even. That was what was key in the last game to set up there. And so we'll be in a position where Wellspring Mask Ogerpon can take out the Dreepy. Might even look to take out the Duskull in this situation.
And when you're taking out both Budew and you're taking out Dreepy, in this case, Alejandro's left with nothing in hand almost. Well, there's a Lily off the top, I believe. So actually saved by the top deck here, Mike.
Wow, what a scenario now. We've got those 2 Hoot available for Alejandro. Loads of options for him. Meanwhile, Alberto, doesn't matter what options you've got to stabilize, you've got to set up here. So in a rough position at this early stage, and the consistency of Toolbox Terra Toolbox, finding that Wellspring Mask Ogerpon every time, it feels crazy that it does it so often.
And doing it so often, these knockdowns are just giving such explosiveness that you can get, and didn't even need knockdown on the turn here. Ultra Ball for Festendipity, being able to use Lily's Determination for 8 cards. What you really need to hit off this Lily's Determination is not Drag Cloaks. You need to Dreepies in the multiples.
And even with those Dreepies, look at that Noctowl taking off the prize cards for Alejandro. So in a great position next turn. Wow, there's so much pressure on Alberto at this stage, and this game has really swung in favor of Alejandro early on. We said that last time, but this one feels even more surmountable for Alberto to come back from.
We're going to be seeing from Alberto that we have to go into a Budew and use Ichipan. Then let's say we get a Dreepy, we get 2 Dreepies. It's still going to be a turn before they evolve into Dragcloak. And then we can evolve it into Dragapult, meaning that all of this is such a timely investment. We do also get to see, you know, Body Puffin straight off the bat. Really great thing to start off with. But with the Noctowl being grabbed off the prizes, you can put Sparkling Crystal and you can get Crispin. You can take 2 prizes on the following turn on that Budew and on an eventual, either that be a Duskull, that would be pretty nice to do actually, or just a Dreepy you want to be taken out. And then you leave yourself at 2 prizes. You leave yourself at, you know, try to see if we can get some engine pieces down the board, not to lose to Iono. But one thing I really would love to see from Alejandro is that you go ahead, you knock out the Budew, you knock out the Duskull to make sure that Alberto cannot prize control to make that Iono go to 1.
Well, this is a big turn now, as it is all about stabilization. It won't be surprising if we see Dragapult come back from the depths of 1 or 2 prize cards remaining, but it really is dependent on how Alejandro stabilizes. Iono was so powerful last game, putting Alejandro down to 4 cards, and it was enough to slow him down. This time, Alberto is looking to try and set up and hasn't been able to disrupt yet at all in this game. So a completely different scenario. And we see straight away that Alejandro has that Noctowl prepped right at the front of his hand, because he knows exactly what he's going to be doing next turn. And what a story for him if he does end up winning this, his first ever top cut, and has played against Henry Brand, 2019 World Champion, now playing against the Gdansk Regional Champion Alberto, both of them with Dragapult. And it is Alejandro now to try and find a way to get closer to victory.
Ready for a Noctowl, Sparkling Crystal, coming up Crispin, and we get to see those 2 being able, I mean, with the Dusclops down on board, it even gives a bigger wink to Alejandro saying that, well, we've got to take out that Dusclops. So in this turn, what I really want to see from Alejandro is giving a nod to the prize control that the Dusclops can give. Knock out the Budew right there, knock out the Dusclops, putting it in so that Iono cannot hit just 1 singular card, and go ahead and look at locking it in that, you know, if we can just get a few more cards, then we'd be right there. And Alejandro being able to use Teal Mask Ogerpon since he's sitting on the richest of energy.
For sure, and this is a big turn, not just about what you do in terms of knockouts. We know that's coming. We know 2 Pokemon are getting knocked out here, that Budew and a bench Pokemon. But it is really about how you stabilize. Have you got a Fezandipity? Have you got the Area 0? There's the Area 0.
On the top.
Are you able to put down some of those support Pokemon like Mew, like Fezandipity? Or is it literally going to be... Oh, is there an...
Sob.
Just a Sob here. Interesting. Looking to stabilize rather than get too aggressive. Very smart.
Yeah, because you could be building up the Mega Wawa as a very good attacker in this situation. And as said, Alberto not running very candy. you're disabling that Fecundipity on the board. Really do love this ingenuity from Alejandro here, saying that regardless, whenever I torrential pump next turn, I'm still going to be able to just draw 2 prize cards.
Well, all of us were looking at thinking, well, this is a given now, isn't it? We're going to be seeing a big 2-prize turn, but all of the things we were alluding to, that disruption down to a 2-card hand, and all of that can be mighty effective against Terra Toolbox. Alejandro said, that's not happening right here. I do not want to let you get away with that. I'm going to stabilize, set up attackers, and deny the opportunity for you to disrupt me, even though the INO still comes out.
And I think, like, whenever the attachment to Mega Mobile came, Alejandro must be jumping CP like, what are you doing here? But yeah, stopping and leaving this Badu in the active. Alejandro still needed that. Only got, whoa, he got Crispin and double energy. Miyu on top. That's stabilization there, mate.
That's a good hand. But that Dusclops is still available, can evolve up, as well as the Drakcloaks coming into play. But the Badu won't be able to retreat, so we now have a Dusclops evolving into a Dusknoir. That's a huge challenge, and one that has been achieved by Alberto here, and being able to evolve all the way through. Does have that counter catcher now to try and disrupt the board of Alejandro.
Typically, it's always going to be something like, you know, either you can pull up the Teal Mask, set that up. Not that that's really good because it still gives maneuverability. You can also go for Noctowl to leave it in the active, making that less weak against something like Latias, or go ahead and set up the Hoot Hoot. And, you know, countering with the Jamming Tower, going ahead and saying you can't even put Latias down. So putting those 10 damage onto the Hoot Hoot, telling Alejandro, well, I'm unlocking you, you're not able to use Energy Switch. This turn it actually looks really hard unless you're getting Turbo plus Energy to use that Torrential Pump at all.
It's almost the same strategy as last game of 10 into the Hoot Hoot, having Itchy Pollen into that Wellspring Mask Ogerpon. Next turn, Alberto can take that 3-prize turn that is so powerful and so common for these Dragapult decks. But you mentioned energy at hand for Alejandro, has options available, won't necessarily be able to attach, retreat, and use the Wellspring Mask Ogerpon this turn, but this has turned into a really fascinating game 3. It looked like Alejandro was going to race ahead and take 4 prize cards before Alberto was even set up, but instead has opted to take it slower, opting for that stabilization, and I can see exactly why he's done that. As this turn, he looks to be in a position to do exactly what he wanted to do last time, but with more stability.
With the Crispin here, we're able to see an energy being attached to the Hoot Hoot, and potentially can also go ahead and attach that grass energy you get into the hand of Crispin and put that onto the Wellspring Mask Ogerpon, still leaving you at a place where you can use Torrential Pump. And then, you know, that Gobble Down, it's going to be able to do a lot of damage, going to be able to do 320 when you've been taking 4 prizes. And you know how much HP Dragapult has?
Well, it has 320 HP right there.
Pretty good maths.
Well, that's going to be an amazing scenario for him, as the attach retreat from the Hoot Hoot from that Crispin will allow for the Mega Mowile to come up here, just working.
Yeah,
out.
of course you can't use Torrential Pump due to the Jamming Tower, so that leaves it not. So basically you just have to go for the Teal Mask Ogerpon. That Jamming Tower would be way more important than we ever thought in this case scenario here. Just attaching to the Mega Mobile, setting that up secondary attacker, going ahead with the Myriad Leaf Shower from the Teal Mask Ogerpon, knocking out the Badu, going at free prices, but this leaves Alberto at least 2 turns to play.
An interesting position. Last time when we mentioned that 1 prize card taken, it's not ideal for the Terra box. They don't want to be taking 3 prize cards. They really want to be going 2-2-2 the whole way through. And on this occasion, it gives Alberto a bit more time to work with, and it means that Drakcloak is still available to evolve into a Dragapult. So options available. Even that activation of Fecundipity is huge. Everything right now leaning back towards Alberto. The Iono to 4 did it again.
And what this has done is also, you can be building up a spot where if we take 2 prizes this turn and Alejandro doesn't respond with a 2-prize knockout, we can potentially ending up with a Curse Blast onto something like, you know, Mega Mawile and be able to pick up the knockout on the Hoot Hoot after taking 4 prize cards. So there is definitely an opening for 6 prizes, 2 turns. But here for Alberto, it always depends on what does Alejandro have at his disposal.
You even have that Dusknoir to think about, and at this stage, because Alejandro just took 1 prize card, might not even want to use that Dusknoir now. Want to keep that in play as to not give Alejandro the win condition, as this turn is massive. What's coming from those Recon Directors? What are you seeing there? I mean, we're all waiting to see how this turn pans out, and I can't imagine how Alberto is feeling right now. you know, playing in a tense match. Alejandro as well, he said he was feeling nervous before about being in this scenario. This is the biggest run of his Pokemon life. He has previously got top 32s, now in a top 4 position, looking to try and make it all the way to the final of his first regional of the season. Meanwhile, Alberto trying to make it his second regional champion.
You see the Lily's determination here. Mike, you know, we really want to be getting Edge Cloak for that Dreepy, and if we get that, we kind of get to see the stars aligning, or start to align, right? We can go ahead, we can do 200 to that Teal Mask Ogerpon, 60 to that Hoot Hoot, taking out, you know, a potential knocked out option. Then we're at 5 prizes left, right? Next turn, you can also go ahead and say, well, we can Gust away, we can Lucha, pick up that Teal Mask Ogerpon, and then leave 10 on something like the Fan Rotom. There's a lot of lines here that Alberto can play into, which more so means that with the amount of lines Alberto can play into, it all depends on what resources do you get at your disposal to be able to then pull out these lines and go for them.
Well, you certainly saw a lot of resources with that Lily's Determination, 8 cards in hand. And we'll be looking to try and set up for the big knockout. Had the Dragapult available already, we'll be retreating into that. And so often, those Hoot Hoots being knocked out by decks, because that is the key pillar for the Terra Toolbox to be able to set up. And so a huge opportunity now to take that first prize card, but so much of it is less about the prize cards and more about getting damage on board and options taken away. 200 on the active and all 6 on the Hoot Hoot. Alberto is trying to claw this one back.
Taking 1 prize card and taking away the resource that a knocked out potentially can be here, Mike, and slowly and steadily building up. Where does Alejandro get to take these free prize cards? Yes, we can be like, well, boss at Latias, boss at Festendipity, take the knockout with Gobble Down, but it still leaves the opening for Alberto with Gust, with Hawlucha to take this game.
And that Ultra Ball in hand could have been a Noctowl if the Hoot Hoot was still available, and that would have been able to lock up an amazing turn for Alejandro. Now we'll have to look to find one of those drawing Pokemon, something like a Fezandipity or a Mew. And that's just not going to be the same guarantee that Noctowl provides. But Alejandro now will be able to go into that deck and find some support. At this stage, these draws are so key.
Key indeed, Mike, and I'm just looking at what Alberto has at his disposal. Do we have the boss's orders, counter catcher? Do we have an out to Hawlucha? I think I did see an Ultra Ball in hand there, so the only last piece that Alberto would need on this next turn is a way to then Gust. And if we have that, then we might just be seeing this going over to Alberto next turn, because I don't see how Alejandro's going to take free prizes. Alejandro's not going to be taking free prize cards this turn. At the maximum, it's going to be 2 prizes taken, leaving that line open regardless of Dusknoir usage. And as you alluded to last turn, yeah, not using Dusknoir is really nice here, because as Alejandro is unable to be taking free prize cards at once, Alberto's just perfectly playing into this.
Alberto in a position to be able to take 5 prize cards next turn. You heard it here. This is quite the scenario. And what has Alejandro pieced together, has attached to that Wellspring Mask Ogerpon, knows that just swinging into the active isn't great, but it looks like
10 damage.
It's going to be 210 damage with the Teal Mask Ogerpon just trying to poke into that Dragapult, but that's not going to be enough for the knockout. Trying to set her up across 2 turns. It's not ideal, but Alberto now can win the game in this next turn.
There's Dusknoir available too, Mike. It makes it even easier for Alberto here. We're going to be seeing the Brock Scouting being drawn. We have 1 Recon directed. We have Cursed Blast from Dusknoir. Only thing we need to see here is, can we get Counter Catcher? Can we get a Boss's Orders here, Mike?
What's available? Well, we'll start with the Recon Directive. One of these 2 cards does need to find a little bit more. That Night Stretcher is available. Will that be enough? Might even just be looking to stabilize at this time. And it looks like going in, finding that...
Oh, Monkey Dory, that's so smart, Mike. We're going to be able, if we can get a Luminous Energy that can take the knockout on the Wellspring Mask Ogerpon. And regardless of what Alejandro throws up front, it's going to be able to be knocked out with Dusknoir in cooperation. It just really depends on if Alejandro tosses up a Festendipity, for example. We're just going to be able to say, like, okay, then we'll just hit it. But if not...
He's doing the maths right now. You can see Alberto's brain is ticking.
But there's a Brock Scouting hand too, which means that we can go ahead and get the Hawlucha. So with Monkey Dory, Dusknoir, Hawlucha, we're going to be able to do this. all of it depends on, and what Alberto's really counting here, where is the Hawlucha? Do we have access to it?
And it's got to work out what would happen if the decision is made, if you push something up. What could Alejandro push up in this scenario? And it will be on the other side of this INO. 5 cards. A counter catcher would be the win here.
5 cards.
Is it there, Alberto? Do you have the counter catcher?
There it is.
Counter catcher. So it looks like Alberto will be able to take this here as he walks through these moments. Counter catcher to gust up the Wellspring Mask Ogerpon.
Dusknor being able to take out something like Noctowl, Van Rotom, and being able to Phantom Dive for the win.
Alberto is in the final of the Lille Regional Championship.
To almost have a game where Alejandro was setting up perfectly into turn 1s every single time.